Zoom? Good to know. Well, I guess we can get started. Thank you so much for coming out tonight, and thanks for joining us on Zoom. We're here tonight to discuss Hartford's enrollment in the Community Resilience Partnership, which is a state of Maine program that helps communities improve energy efficiency and become more resilient to climate change. We'll be sharing information about the partnership, some changes that we're observing in the weather in Western Maine, and answer questions about the partnership and the enrollment process for the partnership. And then we're going to start to gather some input about what resilience actions you would like to see the town of Hartford prioritize. I want to emphasize that we're here tonight to gather input about what makes sense for Hartford, not to make any decisions about the trajectory. We are going to have a second meeting in January. I don't have the date. It's the 12th. We're so sad. Yes. That'll be on the 12th, and we'll be digging into the information a little more, getting more input, and hopefully hearing from some additional voices. And I also wanted to say up front that we are the Center for an Ecology-Based Economy. We are a climate justice nonprofit based in Norway, and we are contracted by the state of Maine to help communities enroll in the partnership. So we're currently working with 5 towns, including Hartford. And so we're just here as facilitators, not necessarily trying to guide any decisions that are made. But that's what we're here to do tonight. And so I'll introduce myself. My name is Claire McGinty. I am the Climate Resiliency Program Manager at CEBE.
I'm Renee Igo. I'm Communications and Project Coordinator at CEBE and also a Hartford resident. I wear 2 hats.
I'm Daryl Woodhouse, a Hartford resident.
I'm Melissa Vanessa, and I'm a Hartford resident, and I also serve as Hartford's representative on the AFCAR board. Susan Lamb.
And who's on Zoom?
Richard Dyer. Want to introduce yourself?
Richard Dyer, yes, I'm just and just tuning in to see what this is all about.
Nice to have you.
So as a first little, I don't know, just start out with some thoughts. If I would just go around and share the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about climate change in Hartford, whatever that might be. Take a moment if you're not ready, but whenever you're ready, you can start us around.
More rain during the winter.
I guess I would say weather events are probably the most important. Not that comes to mind.
Yeah, rain and winter. My least favorite thing in the world is what I can think of. And that means for the municipality, that means the use of tons and tons and tons more salt because rain on frozen roads means ice, changes all of our snow and ice control changes. And also the other thing that is really on my mind, I keep hearing people saying, oh, this warm weather is so nice, I wish it could just stay like this. And I just think, welcome invasive species. And I'm not happy with that. I like the main use too.
Well, I think looking at trending, I live on the line, water's been low for several years. This is nice to have a lot of rain this fall, kind of bring the water tables back up. I travel and I work for a heating oil company that does a lot of energy stuff and shortages, and cold weather without snow is bad because it doesn't instate people's foundations. And selfishly, I'm a snowmobile, a skier, and snowshoer, and it's hard to do that on ice, really hard for dirt. And I need snow against my foundation to keep the heat in.
Even if you're a skater, the ice on the ponds takes forever to freeze up, and then it's not safe.
It rains again.
I'd like to see the weather go back the way it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's one of our options.
You know, I think so, yeah.
We can still want though.
Any thoughts from Richard?
Richard,
What?
are you paying attention? Do you want to add your thoughts on this?
I'm just trying to, I understand this has something to do with grants to improve the community. Is that correct?
Yes.
Beyond that, I don't know much of anything about, is it state funded? Is it,
Yeah.
do we apply for grants? None of, I don't know any of that kind of thing.
Yeah, those are excellent questions, and we'll be getting to those in just a moment, but to answer them briefly, yes, these are state grants, and yes, Hartford will be applying for them. CEBE will be helping Hartford apply for the first round, and there will be some additional support from a regional coordinator who will describe that position a little bit down the line, who can help Hartford continue applying for this funding. We can get into more details about the program in just a little bit. Anything else that folks want to add to just breaking the ice, thinking about what climate change, what comes to mind when we think about climate change?
And the other thing about not having snow has to do with, for me, has to do with economic impact. And economic / inconvenience. When we have these open winters with barely any snow, I know that my old farmhouse, there's cracks in the floor that you can just about put out a match. And when I can bank the house up, it's like setting it in the styrofoam cooler. So it's a lot warmer. The other thing is with the open winter, we have a lot of people living with frozen pipes, frozen sewage out pipes, and frozen water coming in pipes. Both are pretty common. We have open winters.
Yeah, I think for me, generally, I just think stress, like the heat stress on the critters and folks who are vulnerable, whether they're older or they're sick, and the economic stress when everything costs more, just stress all around.
The other
Ticks, finding ticks in November, that stresses me out.
Well, the other thing about economic impact has to do with how many people. And she mentioned snowmobiling, which that's more or less story writing, but there's an awful lot of people who stuff, and there's a lot of people who count on ski areas for seasonal employment, and if that's not happening, then there's a bunch of people who are, there's a bunch of people who can be out of work to do.
Snowmobiling offers, and skating and snowshoeing offers recreational opportunities in a state where daylight is very short, and getting out and getting sunlight helps for mental health and burning anxiety. And when you can't get that, every full moon we have more problems.
It seems to me, also in the summertime, we have Bear Pond and Lake Massagunticook. And it seems to me with time increasing temperatures, we're going to have poorer water quality, greater algal blooms that potentially cause problems.
Absolutely.
Right, and runoff and get all of our rain for 3 months in one day.
I've noticed changes in wildlife too, a lot. Okay, the deer herd ebbs and flows, and it's at a fairly high ebb right now, but you know, the other thing is, we have, you know, quite a few, animal invasive species as well. Oh my God, I drive to work, I don't see, you know, 40 turkeys at least on my way to work.
One thing I've noticed really big is the ocean has gotten warmer.
Say it like 20 seconds ago.
Oh, wow.
It's incredible.
Oh, I've noticed it there. I remember years ago, you couldn't even step your foot and then go, get out of here. Now you can actually go swimming in it.
Yeah, the Gulf of Maine is warming faster than 96% of the oceans right now. It's pretty extreme. Hey, this is a
Yeah, build us a word cloud.
Yeah, let's throw this in. So we'd like to make a little word cloud from this discussion, just as a way of visually representing some of these ideas. I like to go in afterwards and just recode, you know, bring themes together if there's anything that came across in different words but meant the same thing. So just a nice
And what about this windy day? Sometimes it just seems like a windy day, but you know, what I noticed is, you know, it's never just breezy. It's like really windy.
Well, it's affecting the ski areas. At Sunday River, they have so many days they can't run the lift because it's too windy.
Well, and there's no making project either. But you know, I had some major damage last winter from large tree that broke off 10 feet up and came down. But it's happening all over the place. I notice, you know, if I look at Facebook, I see people saying, "Oh, the power is out again." How often is the power out? Like really a lot, right? It's for those of us who have central power. I'm not one of them, but I hear people. Pardon me?
It's nothing new.
But you know that there's more wind events, and so I'm thinking, and what was the last time we saw a day of just gentle rain? It doesn't usually gentle rain, it comes down in buckets. So, yeah, that's another thing that I'm running with.
So we have in your folder, if some of you are already looking at it, there is a page that has front and back some colorful graphs. And this is just to be on the same page with everybody. A lot of you said a lot of these things in your own words already. Feel free to dig into it more when you get home. The interesting thing here is we pulled data that's all specific to Maine. So we're not looking at national or international trends, and that's coming from local weather stations and NOAA. So there's some able to get pretty specific to where we are in Oxford County.
It's small. I'm
Yeah.
looking at it so small, so I'm so wanting to reach out.
Yeah.
we do have, just for the record, we have digital versions of this that we can share afterwards and dig in.
So this is, like I said, it's all just historical data that we pulled, not really talking about projections, because people will get more concerned about projections, but just looking at what's already happened, we can already see that we are warming much faster than the rest of the country and even the rest of the state. There's, for some reason, a hot spot over here in Western Maine. We've already seen more than a 3-degree temperature increase in the past 100 years. And that winter is warming faster than the other seasons. Increased weather events, increased snowfall, decreased snowfall, increased rain, fewer days of frost, increased heat, stresses people out.
In the summers,
The water's warming, like you mentioned, the algal blooms, Daryl, the lake surface temperature in the interior state warmed 5.5 degrees since 1984. That's within all of you all's lifetime, not ours, but that's a bunch. Invasive species.
it doesn't feel like it's that long.
Yeah. And then the cost of all of these things, whether it's going to the hospital because of heat, or going to the hospital because of wine, or whatever else, drank some bad water out of the lake while you're swimming, I don't know. But it does cost us in all sorts of different directions. And like you said, the mental health costs. Yeah, so that's all stark. It's quite in perspective for us. Anybody have any questions? It feels like a lot of people are coming in with at least some lived knowledge already, lived experience. But any questions about the science behind it, or where we're at here in Western Maine?
Great, well, we can talk about solutions. It's a little, can be a little overwhelming sometimes, seeing and experiencing firsthand some of these changes we're having. Flip this over quick. That's why we're here tonight to discuss the Community Resilience Partnership. Like I mentioned, this is a state program from the Governor's Office of Policy Innovation in the Future. We call them GoPIF, not the best acronym, but it's what we've got. And this program launched in the beginning of this year, and it came directly out of the work of the Maine Climate Council. They worked on this report, or non-report, a climate action plan called Maine Won't Wait for the state. And this was the state's attempt at kind of translating that statewide set of goals and metrics they have for the progress they'd like to see at the state level, and bring that down to communities. How do we make these different strategy areas things that make sense for communities, that can actually be implemented? And what I find the most exciting is, how do we build capacity and offer support? So that's not just the rich, large communities that have planners and all sorts of consultants who can help them out, but how do we make this something that's accessible to everyone? And so the partnership aims to help communities become more resilient to the effects of climate change, to transition to clean energy, and to reduce energy use and costs. And that's accomplished through two ways. One, I started to allude to, is the direct support piece. And that's the role that CEBE is playing. We're helping communities enroll in the partnership so that you don't have to do all of the work yourself. We can kind of help with that. And so those are the service providers who are helping communities enroll. But there's also regional coordinators. For Hartford, that's going to be Yvette at AvCog, Yvette Munier, and she kind of picks up where we leave off. So CEBE's role is to help complete the enrollment materials, which I'll describe in a little bit, and then help Hartford write and submit that first grant application. After that point, Yvette kind of steps in and is there to offer support on following grant rounds, looking for other funding sources, whether it be federal funding or Efficiency Maine or other just options that are out there. And so, you continue to have that network. There's also learning series. Right now, there's a webinar series going on the partnership. And so there's all sorts of opportunities for continued support through this process. So that's great, but the funding is also nice. And so there are these grants, they're called community action grants, and they can be up to $50,000 every 6 months, or $125,000 if it's a collaborative grant between two communities. So let's say Hartford and Sumner wanted to collaborate on one of these grants, and if it's a project that's going to cost up to $125,000, you could request that much. And these are all no match grants if they are addressing resilience actions that come from the list of community actions that are in your folder. We're going to be diving into these later this evening, but if you just page through, you can see there are a lot of different options. And so it's pretty hard to find something that doesn't fit into these buckets. But they do still allow you to request that funding. There would just be a 10% match for the town in that case. If it wasn't one of the 71 actions. One thing that's kind of, we noticed that is missing from the list is there's not much relating to waste management and like a recycling program or something like that, which is, so it's probably not relevant. That is the one thing I thought of that's like, oh, that could kind of tie in. There you go. That's the way to do it. Maybe, but regardless, that apart from that, there's a lot of different, most of the actions you can think of fall into these categories, or you can make the argument that you are addressing one of these actions, even if it's a little outside the box. So in order to be eligible for these grants and to receive the support of the regional coordinator, towns need to enroll. And in order to enroll, communities must complete 2 self-assessments, which we already started doing that work.
And we scored very modestly.
Which is not different from any other community we're working with. And so we'll be discussing those assessments at the second meeting and starting to dig into those and get feedback from community members. But once you have those self-assessments, you also need to prioritize community actions. And so again, that's something we'll be doing later this evening, starting to look through this list and saying, okay, well, what makes sense for Hartford? What would we want to see happen? And then communities need to pass a municipal resolution. And there is an example.
Is that a town meeting sort of thing, or is that something that is done by
That can
the
just
city council or select board?
that can just be done by the select board. In all of our towns, it's been at a normal select board meeting. And that's something, there's sample language in your folders as well for that. Yeah, there are 3 required statements on the front and a list of optional statements on the back. And so at the next meeting, unless, yes, and you can choose, you could choose one, you could also write your own. Ultimately, it doesn't change much about the way you participate in the program, but they do give options as, these are kind of justification statements. This is why we want to join. And so that's usually passed. That's kind of the last step, because in that municipal resolution, you'll be stating, these are the actions that we want to prioritize. And hopefully that'll be coming out of these 2 engagement sessions. So that's kind of the last thing we do. And then CEBE can package all of that up. We can do one last review of the materials, and then we send it off to the state. And at that point, we're ready to start applying for these grants. On the topic of the grants, it's kind of 2 different steps. So there are these actions. These prioritization process is kind of the bigger picture, in the next 2 years or so, because the program kind of goes in 2-year phases. What are the big actions that we want to take on? When we get into the grants, we'll have to do some work to narrow in and say, of these, what do we want to focus on for the first grant? And is there anything else that didn't come out as a prioritization that makes sense to tuck in? You can address multiple things in one grant. For example, in Otisfield, I'll say they just received their funding for their community action grant that they submitted in September. And they requested funding to install heat pumps, to update their watershed protection plan, and to host a community resilience event in the summer. And so those are 3 pretty unrelated actions, but they were able to request funding for all of those on the same grant. And so some of those were priorities identified through the process, but the heat pumps, for example, that was one where they were just like, it makes sense right now, this is something we need, let's tuck that into this grant.
It's my first thought on our furnace in the school. That was my first prize. This is our gift for 2 heat pumps.
We do have a new energy efficient furnace,
That's good.
probably not as good as the heat pump, but
Well,
it's more energy efficient than the old concrete.
You know, in fact, I think because of the nature of this room with only heated with cables, that heat pumps would probably work okay for the kitchen. The other thing about heat pumps is they don't just heat. And even as warm as it is, they're like,
Yes, that's what I was thinking too.
The office looks like a small space. In fact, to me, the idea of solar panels, right?
that's what, this is one of the things I've been, I don't know, of course, I was in office when this metal roof was put on, and anybody who looks at this building during the daylight can see that on the south side, the roof, the color of the roof is fading considerably. Why? Because the sun heats on the southern side. Myself, I'd like to see us put a whole bunch of panels up there, which would not only defer any cost from heat pump use, but probably cover an awful lot of our regular energy use.
Yeah, South Paris's grant includes they put the solar panels on the police station to cover that building.
That's what I'm doing.
Any building, I mean, in the realm of
Yeah.
buildings.
Newer than this one.
It was certainly newer than this one.
Right, that's what I mean.
So, the other thing is, I know that there are other people, there are other entities out there that can possibly properly. You mentioned efficiency main, when I call them about heat pumps, you know, it was a dead winter and the furnace had quit and we were kind of, and they were kind of not super helpful when I talked to them, but I know that there's efficiency, maybe the other one, like, versus, private enterprise is, Revision Solar. They offer for communities, the opportunity to get into putting up panels, and they will own the panels for a spell. And then after perhaps 7 years, you can buy them back at a dramatically reduced rate. So you actually own it.
So I think it's probably better off buying.
It could be.
We use revision energy.
You do.
Yeah. We didn't have heat pumps done by then, but we had heat pumps done by.
Split.
Yeah.
That's good. So they work good.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the other thing is a hybrid hot water heater, which is essentially same concept. So, heat hot water.
Gone that much.
Quick recovery.
You know, there's a 8-gallon hot water tank, and it's electric, and when the power is going to be used, we flip the switch, it's got a little light underneath it, so you don't leave it on. So we don't leave the hot water on all the time, but it takes quite a while for that 30 gallons to heat up.
So any questions about the partnership, the process for enrollment, how these grants work? Anything?
Garden grants, state grants.
It was pretty exciting. So the past 2 rounds, all of the projects have been fully funded up until this point. They haven't turned anybody away. Of course, now more and more towns, there's 127 communities that have already beat you to the punch that are already enrolled. So as we see more and more communities inspect, at some point the grants will start
Rolling funding.
getting competitive. But this last round, all the towns we worked with got all of their projects fully funded, whatever they asked for. So it's nice to be able to say that there's context for hope here. It's not like going for a huge federal grant that like, well, there's a 1 in a million chance of coming.
Right, so like a lot of
Put all this time into it without being sure if we're gonna get anything back.
Is there a cutoff amount? No?
Yeah, no, and we're also waiting to hear about how much they're going to commit. They announce before people start submitting for the next round, how much is available for that upcoming round, so
You say every 6 months, but every 6 months for the foreseeable future, or what?
at this point, yeah, it's written into the biennial budget, and this past time, they actually found some additional funding that I think had been, appropriated to GoPIF, but maybe in different parts of the program, and they're able to swing it over and fund more grants. And so it is, it's promising. We're waiting to hear about how, how much more they're committing to. I think it's safe to say this program will continue for at least the next couple of years, but they're not saying that there's a sunset date. And at this point, we think it's.
And we've made it very clear to the state as a service provider that we go out and build trust in the communities. We want to make sure that the state follows through on their part, and we're not just wasting everybody's time, having a lot of great conversations about things that none of us can afford to make happen.
Anything else? Do we still have, sorry, who is on to?
Richard, Diane. Richard, do you have anything else to add? Questions?
Well, I'm trying to listen to this. I'm getting some. It sounds to me like grants are available for almost anything that improves the community. Like if we got a ash borer problem or a climate issue or gravel running into streams and so forth. It sounds like it's pretty wide open as to what a town might ask for money for. And the thought just went through my head that the town of Hartford has two issues that take up about a third to a half of every select board meeting, which are the old railroad bed, which has a beaver issue, and some people want it for a walking path, and other people want to keep where they can drive on it. The other issue that keeps coming up again and again is our beach and access to our beach, where maybe for $50,000 we could put a road right down to the beach, and that would solve a lot of the problems with that. I'm just wondering if those kinds of things are things that could be considered. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I think, so this program is very focused on that climate piece. And I think maybe it sounds like there's some recreational trail that's being discussed. There could be, yeah, there could be some, that might be one of those things where you could ask for a 10% match and make the case that it's maybe, folding into trying to make bike ped, make Hartford a little more biking and pedestrian friendly. Otherwise, those do feel like they fall a little outside the categories for this set of grants. I can also say we do have a link to the list that we have here in person. Maybe I can send it to you and you can put it into Zoom or.
Richard, would you like me to bring you one of these folders? I could pick one up for you and drop it off.
Yes, I'd like a copy of it.
I thought you might.
Okay.
This will give you a chance to look at the list of 70 community actions that are within the scope of this grant for no match grants.
Had I realized there was going to be largely pass outs tonight, I probably would have come down instead of been on the computer. But so I gather, did I understand you to say that most of the grant has to have some connection with climate improvement?
Yes.
Okay.
And energy.
I did get that
Energy
much.
efficiency.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about climate. I got a lot of squirrels getting in my bird feeder, but I don't think you can help me with that.
Well, invasive species are definitely part of the climate problem, but what this is called is the community resilience partnership. So the idea is things that can help to make the community more resilient.
Oh, any other questions?
Do they have any kind of health component? Are they looking at any of those sorts of things? Yes, I think one of the discussions that started out with comment about additional ticks, we were talking about deer effects on the deer, et cetera. And I think, certainly we're seeing or hearing more Lyme issues and certainly some additional bacterial infections from some of the ticks. So I don't know what they're doing in terms of that, if they're including things. I mean, we're really touchy about things like we don't particularly want pesticide spraying. On the other hand, we also don't want people, we don't want a community with everyone sick with Lyme. And we basically we don't really have any easy healthcare places, whereas if there was something that said, okay, you could get, whether it was a Lyme vaccine or something else, and the town did it twice a year. Is that in there?
There is, on the third page, there's part of strategy area as building healthy and resilient communities. There's this whole section on strengthening public health.
Yeah, those are some pretty open. There's some of them are more open-ended than others. Yeah. Norway is one of the ones doing the vulnerability assessment, taking a look at some of their elderly folks who live in those second-story apartments with no AC, and who's checking on them when it's 95 degrees for 4 days in a row.
That would be another reason to put it in the next split in town hall. To be able to have somewhere where people could come down.
And cool off. We do have these overhead fans which are hugely helpful, but still.
Yeah.
And I understand the heat pumps cool as well.
Yeah, that's what Otisfield has in their community hall right now. They installed 2 heat pumps and are using it as a cooling center during some of those heat waves.
They also use it for conferences. Otisfield is actually pretty excellent little town.
Going on. But it's on the topic, just putting ideas out there. The other part of that Paris grant that they received is a feasibility study to assess how they can turn their fire station into a cooling center, emergency center that is off-grid. So instead of having relying on electricity from the grid or relying on a diesel generator, how they can get solar battery storage. So in the case of
not just
extreme,
putting up panels that actually, because I see people all the time putting on panels who are grid tied, and then when the grid goes down, they're out too.
Yeah. So just things to think about. Wonderful. Well, I do want to give us a chance to get up and stretch if we want it. Otherwise, we're a small enough group. If we feel like just pushing through, we can.
There's some sneaky snacks and clairvoyance and water for tea back there too.
If we're feeling like we want to.
Tea right off.
That might be the way to go. Otherwise, we could take like a 30-second break transition. If people want to grab something, go ahead. But we can start discussing the next phase here if we're feeling like we have some momentum. All good with that? Great. So next we're going to start to, and we already started to, but we're going to dive into these community actions. And let's see, you're going to be in on it. So I'm just going to take a second into the break.
4, 5, 6, 7.
7.
Oh, you're doing this.
Yeah, you know what? We'll do a little Or we, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there's still 2 episodes as well.
Yeah. So we can still do it. Sure.
Do we got any towns looking into charging stations?
Not with this funding. We, sorry, just doing some math there. We do have another new staff member at CEBE who has been helping towns apply for efficiency main funding for charging stations. And so that's kind of outside of the CRP work that we're doing, but it is, yeah, we have towns that we're working with who are considering
The efficiency main funding is open through January 10th, 7th.
I thought it was 17.
17th, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's no match necessarily for the town, but it has to be 2, like a charger that has 2 ports, and it has to be either on town property or a library or some other public. It can't be at somebody's house or a private business. But we can certainly connect the dots if that's something you're interested in moving. And there's some thought that they may open this grant up again in the future. They extended it because nobody could find any contractors to give quotes because everybody's scheduled out through April. So the first round got extended a little bit.
Everyone gets except for
Yeah.
you.
Correct.
So what if we split up, we do 3 groups and we break up the select board, so each one of you has to talk to somebody else who's not on the select board. You guys talk to each other all the time. Okay, well, it's not my business. Assign or something. So who wants to, so there's strategies A through H. So 1 pair, a select person and a non-select person willing to take strategies A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Look, so yeah, so
Yeah,
what are we doing here?
What's going on? Raise the. So since we have. There we go. So since we have such a big list, but we do want to get eyes on each action, we don't want anything to be neglected, and we found when we go through it as a whole group, the ones at the end sometimes it's hard to get through all the way. So we like to break people up into groups to discuss different sections, and Renee will divvy out those in a moment. But before we break up and get into the chaos of talking to each other, I did just want to give kind of the guidelines for what we're trying to accomplish here. And so with your strategy areas that you're assigned, with your group or partner, you want to look through the actions, you can take a moment on your own to look through your section and see what seems interesting, which you want to prioritize. And you can each discuss which ones you feel are like, the most interesting, the ones you want to see Hartford pursue. And the end goal is to identify 1 to 2 actions from each strategy area. So that's the goal. It's fine. There's some you'll notice that are a little skimpier. There's some where it's not as relevant. Maybe there's a lot on flooding. So that doesn't have to be exact. If they're like, wow, there's 3 really great ones in this other strategy area. 1, okay, one in this other one. We're not really holding it too closely to that. But don't choose every single action. It's really what we're trying to limit here. And so once we regroup, Renee is going to take notes. You can report back from the discussion, so you can say which actions you came up with. And at the end of the meeting, we have dots in all of your folders. If they didn't fall out, we do have extras too. And you can dot which actions are most exciting for you, which ones you want to see the town pursue. That gives you an opportunity to weigh in on some of the ones that make it a different section.
Non-official voting.
Non-official voting is just a way of gathering input. And the other thing to say is, after we've all gone through, especially since we're a small group, we can do another round of saying, let's say you discussed strategy area A, B, and C, but there's something in G that's really interesting to you and it didn't come out of the other person's discussion. You could say, hey, let's add G6 to the list. And so we can keep this kind of free flowing. It's not supposed to be too stressful about like, oh, we have to eliminate good options. It's just a way to get eyes on everything. So that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish here. Any questions about that process before we tell you what we're doing?
What are we supposed to do with the dots again?
Well, we'll describe that again at the end, but basically Renee is going to write up all of the different actions that you all suggest as like most relevant.
Good fit for Hartford.
Good fit for Hartford. And then at the end of the meeting, you can, from that list, dot which ones.
You could put all 3 of your dots on one if you like, but really, really, really
Is it
want
the
us to do
most
this thing, or you can spread them out. This
That's
gives
what I
you-
always do, take actions, I never want to swap.
Okay, so we're gonna do pairs plus a trio. I'm participating, and I think Richard, you'll just have to listen in if you don't have an action list yet. But we'll also revisit this list on the January 12th meeting to get further into these things.
I'll make that for him.
So strategy A is embrace the future of transportation, B is modernize Maine's buildings, and C is reduce emissions through clean energy innovation. So 2 volunteers, 1 select and 1 non-select, who want to take A, B, and C?
I'll
Lee. All right, there, all right, you all are a
So
team.
you're a group of a pair?
Yes, so you'll have, how many minutes are we giving you all? We're giving you 15 minutes to dive into A, B, and C and figure out which ones are the best fit for Hartford. We're gonna go with strategies E, F. Those are pretty bulky. E is protect the environment and promote natural climate solutions, and F is to healthy and resilient communities. Who wants E and F?
Sure, why not? I'll take it now.
Okay. Leslie, are you hoping for E and F, or would you rather have?
I'm totally easy, doesn't matter.
It's the health piece.
It's the health piece. Why, yeah, if you want to, so you want to be a pair, and then I'll pair Kathy, and then Leanne, if you want to participate.
The help piece, then you jump and pick a different one and pick rural health and
Well, I think F, that E, wait, what did I say? I said E and F. which
Oh,
was-
good, so we do have a state
Yes.
number.
Yes. Okay, and then we'll do D, G, and H, right? Is that what that's-
G, and H?
Yes. Yeah.
E and F, right?
Alright, so there's E, G, and H. D is pretty still there all.
So we just need
It's D, G, and H, yes, so these the pro jobs.
So I don't actually see a lot of natural resources in terms of what that relates to part of it. Yeah, no, I'm not seeing the section. But they are. Same thing. We don't have policies that are short, right? We don't have to get this word on. Those things. Fourth thing I think about is gas stations. Now, I'm sure we have some brownfield sites, but I'm not sure. I have one that was only on.
Oh, this building around. Established so as well. Yeah, some of this is really bigger cities than that actually.
I'd love to see it, yes, there's a lot of jobs people who are doing things, but again. We're not looking exactly closely enough to. It's not like we are, you know, we're basically set up. As opposed to actually working right here. So our export. It's absolutely perfect. And again, they're not, now maybe also build something, but we don't have to be really solar panels or.
It is, yeah. Right, without a lot of public.
That targets for increasing green spaces.
Right, right.
I think we're well.
We have. The one that we don't work for, so we have.
Right, right.
I can
Yeah.
give us a somebody is gonna be doing something like how you want it. Perhaps it would be nice to
Yeah.
have an ordinance or something that says,
I like,
well, they have, I mean, they have.
D1, enabling, supporting, or incentivizing local.
They are required to now.
Last night was under our gardens. Folks are
Basically, names,
something even having.
DNR, I guess, there's things that oversee these resources, oversee free forest. Again, most they have their related.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Or about the bank.
And
How to get
there
there.
still would, but again, I used to be, I still was like
You're in Hartford, but a lot of people are growing up in Hartford, so.
I know one someone.
Yeah.
Universities are, universities, they don't test.
I don't really know the infrastructure stuff. Like I know some of that, like bridges and stuff like that, I'm not really sure. I don't know enough about
Prioritizing conservation paths, meters and lots, land, water, activity. There's so much apartment doesn't.
I imagine there's a number of small
There's a lot less.
bridges,
I completely agree with doing all those things that I'm sure is that
they
it's
take care of what we're in.
connecting up with, that, a lot of public hills are on top of it. I think it's one of those.
Right, yeah, I know.
So, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
again, I don't see that as, you know, it's not a high priority. Getting funding to do something. Create an updated watershed plan to identify flooding, water balance priorities, and that is one option. We certainly have some watershed plans, both on smart lakes, streams, smart
Something that might be something to look into. And I think they do have some more detail on some of these online.
I doubt there is a.
But we were only 4 pages, 2 pages.
So, anyway, definitely,
Yeah, otherwise we
you
don't
know,
have first one.
so, you know, the two of them are taking for us.
I'm always feel that Woodstock, the last round, went for each one, having the taking funding, but now there's actually video. Meeting is what they do. I don't know about Hartford's, just lots of videos. So many people, if there's gonna be any appetite for forming a based on it or not, I'm not sure. There is
I guess that's one of those things where, you know, you have plenty of money, you to add a little bit into something, I would say that would be great. Why don't you choose? Because I think that's going to be really important for the future. Whether it's, you know, preserving, the ability for, you know, deer, turkeys, and whatever, to move back and forth. I think that, you know, I know we're talking about the beaver problem, but, you know, my attitude is we need to leave the beavers and figure out a way around, you know, how the beavers and beavers are important to the ecosystem as well. Still be able to do some, but you still want to be able to, you know, whether it's any of those problems. You know, so I think like floodplains and repair. I
haven't heard go up. I didn't know without it.
I think quite honestly, our people are. So big things are. You know, upgrading things can be light skills. She was trying.
So what's the current plan for how long is that going to be? Still investing in that building? Or?
For farming, there should be someone, and there is no, to walk them into the park, and you walk them halfway, but that's not really safe when it starts. Having done that way too many times, or I see or something like that, so I would say, you know, that's something, certainly could do.
Right, so it's still.
And I think we have to answer something.
They take it out and put it in.
How do we get in that?
It's not like a real factor.
You know, not strictly. Trying to wrap this door back here again. Still, we gotta be able to get them. Way over here, just kind of off. And if one person is parked there, then, you know, then the other people have to pull out, get the person out of the car. You know, and if there's only one person that came with them, then they have to stay there like this while they're waiting for the person to go park the car out of the way. So, yeah, I mean, I think some of those things are more, you know, between some of the health issues, I'm absolutely supporting the environment, but I don't think that's something high for us.
And you know, you will not be out of the question.
No, I mean, it would
So
be
it's water protection
H2
program.
would be great to figure out how could we reach people, but. Different climate change.
Yeah, no, you always say that.
Yeah, or
Yes.
or
What is
the.
CEBE?
Yes, we thing more and more.
But also nonprofits.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about like making cigarettes.
They have their.
Someone's got a number.
Okay.
That's
I believe it's really
Stop
hard to
this.
describe it.
Grants, but also,
It stands
as
for
commercial
commercial
property,
property, assessment, energy.
several plans and keep things based on what.
So I just want to be part of it on the.
There you go. Okay, no, this is 55 right. So that was
Access. Yeah, well, that might be the sort of thing that, you know, and.
As long as it don't get hard enough up here for snakes to move up here.
Something.
You should see that.
The brown neck is like.
For a number of.
They have timber rattlers in Massachusetts. They have them in New Hampshire too.
No, they have.
So
I've been looking into it. I think they like historically have, they haven't seen them in a while. Either it's that or that's made.
So I mean, the water protection program, and I'll look it up, but I'm just like, I think it's a lot more.
I think we're good, yeah.
Adopt policies that
Brown
are.
with the like the front first.
Nature research. We're getting a raise for just about.
We're gonna take about 5 minutes.
Okay, good.
We don't have any so much migration.
No, that's fine.
That'd be a longer. That'd be pretty long. Oh, I know.
We'll get some of the.
We should jump to F. That's gonna be more than 5 minutes.
I was trying to imagine earlier, anything like public transit or alternative transportation, like any car moves or anything like that. I was trying to imagine like what would be. How would you do this? Like starting from some kind of ride share.
I think that sounds lovely.
Oh, really? Well, I know there's such demand, you know, people get really valuable appointments on the past, but not necessarily side chairs.
Yeah. And so, focus on the basics, and you get focused on the basics. And we just, he only has a plan with roads and that Google says it brings and some road.
Has, that was some signs on it. For interstate, go away, they have like a rush, go on.
And
But I know it's kind of that, but you can see where the state might be going. But, so I thought it'd be, yeah, there's nobody's using it, so it's like, well, that's just not sign up, it's like, oh, well, everybody's going in. Yeah. But it really feels like. Starting.
Indoors, you can use.
It's like, walking, it's not safe, it's not a shoulder, you run out
So the one thing I already was outside pictures and say,
Add some adjective.
well, we do that with these. Develop a strong agreement. So, how do we deal with strong agreement? Trees and things like that. It's not like we have neighborhoods that are likely to tornado, although I was sitting on a meeting.
So our currently, we still get the power steering. Right, but there's no.
I was doing Board of Appeals hearing, and nobody wanted to get on.
Already having something.
And I kept standing at the door. Watching to see if there was any sign of anything. It was not ever that day, and I had sent everything out. No one wanted to, they didn't want to stop, they didn't want to.
I'm signed up for power. It's 15% off. So I paid out instead of CIP. And so when CIP raises the price is 40%. I'm not price to go up 40%, but at least it's 15% less than. So it's a poor problem on the end. But it's still something, so it's community solar. Yeah, there's plenty in there. It's all, they're putting in panels like yeah. That's a good software. Yeah, that's a good short.
We jump into strategic growth.
I don't know as much about what they're saying. It's when you're research.
In the interest of time, and since it's getting quite late, I do want to make sure we get out of here before 8:30. And so we're
I
gonna,
like the way you think.
we're gonna bring it back together. Ended early.
Yeah.
What can I say? For those of us who work and have farm chores, a meeting at 5 is just not enough. I can get there. Yeah, because sometimes we can meet at 6 and then it's always a high pressure situation.
Well, it's whatever, whatever each one wants, but yes, I agree. I mean, I would be able to.
I was there this all day, and we are Zoom yesterday. When I looked there, nothing's going on, and I realized it started at 6. So, but I'm not even giving Zoom meeting at 6.
All right.
Okay, so you would like to hear from A, B, and C?
Sounds great.
Okay. Oh, I did, and A2, install EV chargers in our public parking area. Because we recognize that while local people with EVs charge at home, people who are in transit are looking for a charger lots of times. We definitely put Hartford on the map, at least for people who use the app. Right?
Yep.
And under and down at the bottom of A was A10. And I think that is, I would want to see our American Rescue Plan money going towards ensuring broadband for everybody. And so this is something we can use grant money for. That would be great. Strategy area B, under modernizing mains buildings, B1 is adopt and execute a plan for energy efficiency and building on-floor weatherization improvements for municipal buildings. And collaborate with the school district, but that's not B2 was to upgrade to energy efficient interior lighting. We did, and unfortunately, it turned out to be like not enough lumens to really illuminate the room. But maybe we could improve on that. And B4 was install a heat pump system, or I have no idea what we are.
Oh, I wrote it down. Variable refrigerant flow. Something
Okay.
really similar to a heat pump from what I can
Okay,
tell.
okay, so that was one of the things, and I'm gonna add to that because Carol has been talking about heat pump based hot water heaters as well. So that's something that is at least conceivable. Also, I'm thinking about this building in particular with the town office. It's a very small building, possibly premium for a heat pump.
Not status well.
No, we will someday have a new town office. We can undoubtedly take our heat pump with us.
We're talking about the same thing.
Yes, so there you go.
It stacks well with weatherization.
That's right. And B9 is professional development for the code enforcement officer. And that seems like a pretty easy one to manage. And then under C, we here, oh yes, C4 is adopt ordinances that allow community appropriate renewable energy storage installations. And I put a check mark there because that is one place that we have already we've already moved into the future. We determined some time ago by select board policy that we would not charge building permits for external solar installations. So for people who have trackers or building something that's kind of structured, but we don't ask anybody to get a building permit for that. Just go for it with a blessing. And then C7 was to install a renewable energy project on municipal property. So these are the things that we came up with. Thank you. You guys are on next.
Okay, so, all right, let's take it.
Whoever wrote it down.
So under strategy D, we didn't really find many things that we thought would be supported, so.
You don't think we didn't do one of these?
I'm a fan, do you want?
My God.
I was thinking about, like,
Do you want to see
workshops for people who garden, you just having some like education, having a master garden around fall. I would think food bank, have like participating with some local farmers. So we do some local food subsidies, make sure the food bank can buy local eggs and local whatever else.
I think we were thinking of on larger scale issues. We were not, moving in large cows or corn
Oh, no.
large
This
fields.
is about.
This was our section here.
This is about-
We were separating.
It's fair.
We appreciate your view, for sure. It's a great idea. That's how we read it. when we first did it. So under section D, section E, we were talking about the Lake Ponds Association, under E7, implementing a water source protection program, because we do have a lot of water sources and water areas
This is
and wetlands. Pardon me?
E7.
seven.
E7. Yeah, and essentially E4, which was develop a natural resource and habitat inventory that includes climate stresses and impacts. Going down to strategy area F, it was F1, conduct a community vulnerability assessment, identify climate risks, and specifically vulnerable populations, and look at the high priority strategies for reducing risk in those vulnerabilities. Because we definitely have an aging population here that have some assistance in order to save the community. F3, we're not sure if we really have a decent warning system or emergency evacuation plan to, I remember.
I'm thinking, but I know we're being over there, and Daryl kept calling and calling and
Oh,
calling.
I was telling you that.
Our emergency evacuation alert system is sitting right here. We had a huge tornado come through here in 2010, and pretty fair crowds were all sitting here, sitting here.
I was
doing-
running.
You're running an appeals board hearing, and the phone kept ringing.
When John's greenhouse got hit.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was the same
About
tornado,
that.
we were right in the line, we were at the end of the line, but the phone kept ringing and ringing, finally somebody looked at me and said, go into it. And it was Daryl saying, there's a tornado, it's heading right for us.
If you remember, we literally, nobody was willing to stop they did not want to stop the hearing. So we opened all the windows in here. Somebody said, close the windows. I'm like, no.
You open the window so that it can,
We opened the windows so A, we could hear, and B, we could, move the air through at least. And opened the door to there and informed everyone.
I went down the cellar and opened the back door, which had a nail opening it shut. So that if everybody needs to run down to the cellar,
We
they
could
can go
get
out and
them
get out.
down to there.
there.
And we literally, I think it was Dave Bragg that got sent to the front door
Wow.
to stand there to see if he saw any sign of anything. And
Oh,
literally
gosh.
it went further.
Well, it sounds like that's definitely a trigger.
And I yelled out to go and secure the animals.
Could you hear it pretty good?
Pardon?
I don't think so.
I stopped up on Cary Hill.
Yeah, it really didn't.
I think it went
But
that way and
but
did
that was-
not come on this side of the water.
That was
I think
the
it
time
went-
that we had
it sort of went
people-
above and over.
People who lived in trailers calling us up and saying, where are we supposed to evacuate to? And so, But, you know, we already have a lot of like potential evacuees right here in the hall, but down south. But,
Right.
Oh.
Okay, so that was an area.
So that, yeah, we said that one, we think that
Good
that's
thinking.
important.
Yeah. We kind of skipped the reduced blood risk because we were
Absolutely.
time, we were looking at every single one. So we jumped right to strength and public health. Because we felt like those were some good priority areas. F13, identifying plan to reduce public health threats in the community that could be exacerbated by climate change. F14, 2, develop and implement extreme temperature emergency plan. With like cooling centers and heating centers, as you know.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about it, but establishing a peer-to-peer program for checking on vulnerable community members or agencies in the area that do a call program, something so that those folks are getting checked on. And then we were talking about some of the education even for tick-borne disease, which is under F17, and increasing community awareness, even having a workshop or classes with people that,
Yeah.
that understand the symptoms and prevention and being offering a resource for that. Is that covered already?
you did 13, or did they say 13, 14,
Well,
15?
the ticks under 7, the kind of 16 and 17 helps.
I know that tick vaccine doesn't work,
Yeah,
so.
I think that, I'm pretty sure we already, all in the F6 department participating in the flood insurance program. I mean,
Okay.
when they do a flood insurance program assessment, they certainly let us know about it. In which areas of town, and in fact, I think we even have, I don't know if it's still on the wall or not, we had one of their updated flood insurance maps.
They did a whole new flood insurance area or flood zone around Bear Pond, and that's where I live. And
Yeah.
so originally when I purchased my place for my grandparents, it was not in the flood zone. But miraculously, 3 years later, when I refinanced, it was in the flood zone. I don't remember it moving, but it was in the flood zone. And so all of a sudden I had to get flood insurance, which just about, you know, broke the bank, it was more than the mortgage. So I had to work, I worked with AFCOG, I worked with, because I had friends over there, and Augusta and our mortgage group, and got surveyors in there that were certified, that could redo the leveling and look at the dam work they've done on the pond. And luckily, you know, 3,000 later, which I just said lying around, I could get all that survey work done and not have to have flood insurance.
that's
But I know
good.
my neighbors from Connecticut have to have it.
Yeah.
They shouldn't, but they have not gone through the steps I have.
Yeah. It can be a massive burden. Yeah. Luckily, there's not as many flood zones as in the coastal regions. I think especially for that section, a lot of it is looking at the coast. But yeah, it can be such a huge burden. How about?
Okay, the strategy area G, we didn't really check off that much. We've got kind of a question mark with G5. Adopt DEP stream smart crossing guidelines. Didn't know whether that was considered
I
as,
think we're already there.
huh?
I think we've already adopted, I don't know, maybe we haven't adopted their guidelines, but I think we've been following the DEP guidelines all along. Because we've been working with Jeff Stearns from the Wisconsin River Watershed Council, I think.
But was wondering whether we could, like the bridge up here if that could be considered
Bridge
recreation.
up where?
Road track.
Oh, yeah, that one, yeah. And what about it?
Just wondering if we could, see, adoption guidelines. Yeah, we could doing that, you're right. Down the area.
When he gets around to it, there's gonna be a new bridge there anyway.
Strategy area H, we checked off H2. Creating climate change education, outreach and engagement program. Focusing on migration and adapts for residents and businesses. We weren't that much on this one when they went up, nothing to do with water treatment plants and nothing. I don't know about H3.
But amplifying these things could be something like just monitoring when there is a heat advisory or something like that and putting it on the Facebook page, you know? I mean, although God knows, I think people would notice it was hot. But,
Give them a little bit of a notice and.
you know. Sort of like that guy on the weather who says, it's going to be cold today, you should dress warmly. I'm so glad somebody in the weather.
But they should use storm packs today.
Great.
Oh, really? Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. So if there's nothing else, we are getting pretty close to the end of the meeting. So what I'm going to say is, I think this is a good place to wrap it up. If there's something that is not on this list that you're like, how on earth is that not up there? We have pens up here. You can add, you know, if there's another strategy.
Are we supposed to put the dots?
You guys put the dots now, it's dots time. So you can dot things. If there's something not on the list that you want to see on there, go ahead and write it at the bottom. We're going to be returning to this at the next meeting, seeing if anything else comes up, if there are other people who weren't able to participate.
Regarding at the beginning or the end.
You get to decide.
You get
'cause
to
you're the
decide.
first
People put it all the way around. We've never had someone put it right on top.
I'd like us to do a massive hiking trail that starts right at the edge of camp, and comes all the way through. Provides walking, healthy walking areas. There might be a few places with local assistance on.
If you agree with something, you can put, if something, you can put yours right next, next to on top of.
Yeah, as long as they can see that you're.
There's more than one, yeah.
There's more than one.
There's more than one, right?
I was thinking B1 and B2 would be kind of together. We
They're
definitely
kind
need
of-
lighting.
they're-
Oh my God.
Here it is. This is energy efficient lighting.
I know, but you can't see it.
But the thing is, it needs to be, have more lumens, you know, and we know that LEDs can do it because it's LED lights that blind you every time you drive at night. for
Oh my goodness.
vehicles, right?
Yep.
Was part of the problem the actual fixtures?
No, it's not fixtures, because when I first started doing this, I actually replaced bulbs. We had UPS supposed to.
That's now digital dots.
Yeah, well, that's why I wondered, I wonder if the fixtures are actually installed.
It's not, it's because the light bulbs they installed were wattage, so that they would be energy efficient, and.
Spread my balloons.
Because.
The lighting is perfect for ambiance. The lighting is perfect for ambiance.
Oh, yeah, it's very good.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. Yeah,
Like going to this community that is like so bright. You know, lights and all, and everyone feels them.
Yeah, I guess the question, I'm just like, you know, like.
Really
somebody
nice.
is able to turn on the lights and
See, lot of action for the heat pumps. Good work, you guys.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you,
for
ladies.
coming out tonight. Just want to say, if you have not already signed in the back and left your email, please do so that we can follow up. We like to put together a synopsis of what we discussed and share back the results before the next meeting. So we use that list to follow up and promote for next time.
And tell your friends.
And yeah,
Friends, enemies, neighbors.
if
January 12th, 7 p.m.
Pick up one piece of
we'd love to have more people in the room, and especially we're really big on youth engagement. We haven't gotten any yet at these meetings. It's been really challenging to know a young person or know someone who knows a young person.
May I still have the stepfather come to work meetings?
Yeah.
It's not around or not.
Do you guys just work with all?
We'll see at some point.
We're not limited. We're only limited by how far everyone's going, right? Oh, no, that's not true. The Casco's in Harrison. Is Casco in Cumberland County? No, Harrison.
I think Casco's still Oxford, but the region one.
Okay, like, oh, you're talking about Harrison was interested